Welcome back to the Andrew and Ian Show. I'm Andrew Surwick here again with Ian. Hi, Ian. It's election night. It was also trade deadline day and the first CFP college football playoff rankings came out today. We don't give a fuck about the election here. We only care about everything else that happened today. What a crazy day, but how are you doing today, man?
Yeah, like you said, we don't really care about the election here, but sports-wise, we're ready to get into this. This is a real active day.
Yeah, really, really active day. Obviously, trade deadline in the NFL was today, and there's quite a few moves that some top teams made today. Some teams made their moves, a week or two ago now. The Chiefs didn't do anything today, but they added Uche from the Patriots and also who'd they add from the Titans?
DeAndre Hopkins.
Yes, DeAndre Hopkins. There we go. And he went off last night, by the way, and we'll get into that
Sure did.
when we get into the to the review portion. But we're gonna get right into the trade deadline right now, and then we'll get into reviewing the NFL games from this week. I guess where do we start here? Do we want to talk Washington making a move to help that defense out, or do we want to talk about the Lions here?
I mean, it's pretty much take your pick at this point, but I think we can start with Washington.
Yeah, Washington. There's also Pittsburgh that I want to talk about what they did today as well, and Baltimore too. But we'll start with Washington. They traded. They got Marshawn Lattimore from the Saints. Don't have the details pulled up here right now. Let me pull these up. Okay, so yeah, the Commanders traded away 2025 third and fourth round picks um, to the Saints, and a 2025 sixth round pick they acquired in a previous trade. Okay, so a third, a fourth, and a sixth for Marshawn Lattimore to go to Washington, and this is this is a good trade, I think, for Washington. They desperately need help in that secondary because they get torched quite often. But the offense just outscores people, and you can't do that in the playoffs, outscoring people. So this is a huge, you know, play or trade for Washington. He Marshall Lattimore leads. Or no, he's third place since 2017 in pass breakups. So he's very good, very effective. Obviously, we've seen him for the past few years just completely lock down Mike Evans. It's the end of an era for that between those two because Lattimore has always had Evans have like his worst games career-wise against him. So for the Commanders, this is a huge win. They didn't lose a whole lot. I think they overpaid slightly, but either way, they get a ton of secondary help with adding Lattimore here.
Yeah, you said it. This is a Commanders team that desperately needs help on the defensive end, specifically with that secondary, and they got one of the best veteran corners out there. And I mean, like you said, this man has been locking down Mike Evans, and Mike Evans is, we all know, I call him all reliable on my fantasy team because, we all know he's good for 1,000-yard season. But, when you're lining him up against Marshawn Lattimore, he's not going to have a good game. And, like you said, Washington might have overpaid, but they got a 2025 fifth round pick with Lattimore. So it's not like they didn't get something else outside of just the player in return. But at the end of the day, they spent two of their own picks and one pick that they acquired later for, like I said, one of the best veteran corners out there. It's a really good pickup for them.
Yeah, and now for Washington too, it moves Sainristil back to the slot where he was having a ton of success earlier on in the season, but they had to move him to the outside out of really a need for help out there. But and I know Sainristil as a Michigan fan, he's a very good slot corner. He's not the greatest on the outside, but he can hold his own. But now that you have now that you can put Sainris still back on in the slot again, that really really helps out this Washington defense. The Lions today made a pretty big move, and they did not overpay at all. Brad Holmes, he cooked today. I wish he would have done more than just grab Zadarius Smith from Cleveland, but he still added a. You didn't find a fix for Hutch, but you did find a fix to replace Davenport, which helps obviously because Davenport's been out way longer than Hutch has, anyways. But so the Lions basically just for a fifth round pick. They also did a pick swap for a seventh round pick and a sixth round pick. I believe the seventh round pick goes to Detroit and the sixth round pick goes to Cleveland now, if I'm not mistaken. So either way you look at it, the Lions paid a fifth round pick for Zadarius Smith, who he's 32 years old. He does have his contract is up in 2025. However, we can just end it next year without any dead cap hit. So that's a positive. But I think having him with Hutch next year would be really, really good because while Zadarius Smith is definitely up there in pressures this year, he's not really up there in terms of sacks, but he's nowhere near what Aiden Hutchinson was producing, and that's why I said he's more of a replacement for Davenport than for Hutch. He's a really, really good edge setter in the run game, though, so that's going to help the Lions defense out even more in the run game. And now you have a guy that can help Aleem McNeil, who is really well, and it also makes blitz packages much more effective now too, because again he does generate a lot of pressure, and so now when you send a blitz, it's really going to help with that, and he's going to be drawing a lot more double teams than Aleem McNeil now. So teams are going to have to scheme around this Lions defense even more, and just imagine if Hutch didn't go down though. These two together, whew.
Yeah, I mean, you said it. It's a good pickup for the Lions, and I do agree. It's not a replacement for Hutch because you can't replace that man. I mean, even still, with him being out and having the bye week, he's still top 5 in sacks in the league and pressures.
Yeah.
So that man was arguably defensive player of the year, and it sucks for the Lions to lose, but Zadarius Smith coming in really fills another hole on the defense with Marcus Davenport being out. It sucks to see him go. That was an off-season acquisition from Detroit that I was really excited to see play. But at the end of the day, Zadarius Smith, you've played in the NFC North before. So that's where I'm really looking at. So he's comfortable playing against these NFC North teams already.
Yeah, he grew up in the South, but he's completely turned into a Northerner. He's played for Minnesota, Green Bay, Cleveland, and now Detroit. So very interesting. The Steelers got from the Jets Mike Williams for a 2025 fifth round pick. And they also picked up a pass rusher from Green Bay, who I'm very surprised sold this time around. They picked up pass rusher Preston Smith for a 2025 seventh round pick as well. And that is huge. And now you look at this Steelers pass rush. You got Preston Smith, who's I wouldn't say a great pass rusher, but he's a very solid one. A guy who can generate pressure on the outside. You have, obviously, Watt, and then they have a great linebacking core. They have this defensive front for Pittsburgh is just loaded with talent now. And then also, picking up Mike Williams to complement George Pickens and have, defenses have to now start thinking about another guy to cover. It's a win-win, and they gave up barely any capital to get massively better.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird to say that Pittsburgh making a move to improve the offense actually really helps them when they've been putting up the performances that they have been recently. I mean, Russell Wilson leading them to like 2 400-yard performances, and I mean they've been playing pretty well. And now, like you said, they just added Mike Williams from the Jets, who with Devontae Adams coming to New York, kind of time for Mike Williams to go because they had Garrett Wilson. They have Alan Lazard, who just went out with an injury. So maybe they could have kept Mike Williams, but they decided if you're the Jets, you need to get some capital back. You need to start, planning for the future. You're not winning right now, so get some uh, picks for your players and see what you can get. And then, like you said, Green Bay selling a little bit here with Preston Smith going to the Steelers. That's a surprise to me. I did not think that they would get rid of any players. I think they would try to add maybe a little help on the offensive line for Green Bay, but other than that, this is it's a shock. I mean, and Green Bay only got a seventh round pick in turn for, like you said, a decent buff up front for that Pittsburgh line, which is already one of the better ones in the league.
Yeah, I mean Pittsburgh obviously defensively has been really stout all year, and now you add a great addition. Well, not great, but a really, really good addition with Preston Smith. Yeah, and like I said too, getting Williams from the Jets, that helps. That creates less, triple coverage for George Pickens. Um, George Pickens is that kind of dude, and really, I mean, he's the only receiver on that team up until today. So, yeah, it's huge. A lot of new faces and new places as of today. There were some other big trades, but nothing super noteworthy. So let's get into reviewing this weekend's slate of NFL and college football games. We'll start here with the NFL. We had the Jets hosting the Texans. The Jets winning this one 21-13. Yeah, it was the first game I think all season Aaron Rodgers hasn't thrown an interception in. He actually looked really good, 22 for 32, 211 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. CJ Stroud, he had an awful game, but that's kind of expected when you play this Jets defense that it has a really good secondary. He went 11 for 30, 191 yards. That said, Joe Mixon had a pretty solid day on the ground for the Texans, but ultimately this Texans team cannot move the ball against good defenses, and that's really how all 3 of their losses have come this year. Is they struggle against really good defenses. I don't know if it's something just schematically that they're doing, but obviously they're also pretty beat up, and that receiving core is really beat up. So that obviously doesn't help when really all you can throw to is Tank Dell. Yeah, the Jets getting away with a nice win here. It doesn't really matter because they're 3-6 and they sold today anyways. So, yeah, all for nothing, I guess, for that one.
Yeah, I mean, you said it. The Jets are 3-6. They the loss to the Patriots really kind of said everything for me last week. It's the Jets aren't going anywhere. They're probably not making the playoffs, and if they do, they're a one and done team. I mean, it's a nice win against a Texans team that's really beat up, like you said, on the receiving end. But if you're CJ Stroud, you got to find ways to at least make this one look better than it did. But an amazing catch from Garrett Wilson is pretty hard to stop, especially something like that when you're just making a catch like that. Again, and just if you're a DB at that point, you just sit back and like, what do you want me to do? I can't stop that. So the great win for the Jets. Starting to get real shaky if you're the Texans fan, but at the end of the day, the Jets aren't going anywhere.
Yeah, they really aren't. At least defensively, they aren't going anywhere. Or offensively, they're not going anywhere. Defensively, that's a solid defense in New York. Anyways, the Bills hosted the Dolphins, and the Bills just barely squeaking by in this one, 30-27. Since Tua's come back, he's looked like he hasn't been out at all with a concussion. I mean, realistically, last week he had a good game. This week, an even better game. 25 for 28, 231, 2 touchdowns. And again, Tyreek Hill's alive. Tua comes back, Tyreek suddenly leading the team in receiving again. Imagine that. But Josh Allen had a really good game as well. 25 for 39, 235, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick. This Buffalo defense has some issues, but ultimately the offense is what won them the game in this one to drive down the field for a last second field goal to end up winning it. It was it's obviously not a great look for Buffalo, but I think ultimately it's a win. You have your division locked up. I mean, no one's even close to you right now in your division. I mean, the closest to you in your division right now, I believe, is the Jets at 3-6, and you're 7-2. So you already won your division basically. But yeah, no, it's you have some question marks, but ultimately you still won the game. The offense is still phenomenal. It's still one of the most efficient offenses in the league, and a win's a win.
Yeah, I mean, you said it. It's a little shaky on the defense for Buffalo, but at the end of the day, they were able to get within Tyler Bass's 61-yard field goal range, and he kicked a game winner, and that was good enough to win it for Buffalo. It's a good win against a divisional team who's been, you know, suffering as of late because they didn't have Tua, but Tua came back with a vengeance in this one. That just wasn't enough to get the win.
No, it definitely was not. The Ravens hosted the Broncos, and this game is exactly why I said I'm very, very cautious about this Broncos team, the way they've been playing, and with their record. They get absolutely stomped by the Ravens, 41-10. Lamar Jackson, really good game, 16 for 19, 280 yards, 3 touchdowns. Derrick Henry, like I said, Baltimore wins whenever Derrick Henry rushes for 100 yards or more. They win. Derrick Henry had 106 yards and 2 touchdowns in this game. Bo Nix kind of regressed a little bit this week, but I think also it doesn't help that this Baltimore team, this defense is really, really good. But yeah, Bo Nix, 19 for 33, 223 yards and a pick, and that was it. But this is why I said I'm very cautious about this Denver team, and the rest of their schedule is brutal. And Baltimore kind of showed, like, yeah, this Denver team isn't as good as we really thought they were.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at it, when you look at the Broncos schedule, they haven't really beat anyone considered really truly good. I mean, the Bucks they beat pretty handily with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin both in, so I'll give them that one. But at this point, they haven't really beaten anyone else who's been good. They lost to the Seahawks, they lost to the Steelers, they lost to the Chargers, they lost to the Ravens, they beat the Panthers, Saints, Raiders, Jets, and Bucks. It's not a good, strength of schedule for the Broncos. So I was also pretty cautious on them, and like you said, the Ravens just handled business here. I mean, the the Broncos defense is really good, but Derrick Henry rushing for 100 yards is a very good performance and 2 touchdowns against, like I said, a good Broncos defense. And Cortland Sutton having your only passing touchdown in the game, that I appreciate it for my fantasy team, but you're not going to win games doing that, Sean Payton.
Yeah, no, you're definitely not going to win games that way. The Browns hosted the Chargers. The Chargers win 27-10. Justin Herbert, what a game from him! 18 for 27, 282, 2 touchdowns. J.K. Dobbins also really, really good game from him. 14 carries, 25 yards and not 25 yards, 85 yards and 2 touchdowns. Yeah, L.A. doing basically what Michigan did last year, except a little bit more passing. Running the ball a lot, but will be dangerous in the passing game, and that's what LA is. And defensively, I mean, now they lead the league in total defense right now, so yeah, Jesse Minter is a fucking genius, man. I mean, you look at Michigan last year defensively, and now you look at what he's done this year alone for this Chargers team in year one defensively, and it's like, oh, okay, I see your game. It wasn't the cheating. I mean, sure, that might have helped a little bit, but Jesse Minter's a fucking genius, and he's been one for a while.
Yeah, you said it. This Chargers team is very reminiscent of that U of M team. I mean, granted, they have the same head coach, so
And defensive coordinator.
yeah. And That right there is gonna help you morph your identity to look very similar. Now, granted, the NFL and college football are different products. So, but at the end of the day, that Michigan defense was crazy good. And the fact that he's now transitioned to the NFL and is continuing just that, this Chargers team might be able to sneak into the playoffs. But as of right now, they're 2 games above 500, and that's a pretty good start for them for the Jim Harbaugh era.
Yeah, it's a good start. I think a lot better than people expected this year. I mean, it's even a lot better than I expected this year. But if the defense keeps playing that the way it is, man, I mean, I don't see a way that the Chargers don't make the playoffs. Just because that defense is that good this year. The Panthers hosted the Saints, and the Panthers getting the win here, 23-22. And they tried to go for a two. The Panthers tried to go for a 2 point conversion after they scored a touchdown with just over 2 minutes left in the game, they missed it, but ultimately didn't really matter because the Saints still couldn't get down the field and score a field goal at that point in time. Derek Carr was finally back, 18 for 31, 236, one touchdown. Not the best game from him, but coming off of injury, you kind of expect a guy like Derek Carr to not really be super, super great. This might have been Bryce Young's best game of his career, 16 for 26. I don't think he's had that high of a completion percentage in any of the games so far in his short career. But hey, maybe he's getting a little bit better. But he also threw a pick because it's Bryce Young. But ultimately, yeah, the Saints are in full panic mode now. The 7 losses in a row for this team.
Oh, how the mighty have fallen. I remember after they were 2-0, two big blowout wins, people were like, "Oh, the Saints are gonna win the NFC South. The Saints are gonna win the NFC. The Saints are gonna win the Super Bowl." The Saints can't even win a regular season game against the, you know,
Panthers.
yeah.
And
So
to be
I mean,
fair,
it's looking
to
like
be
the
fair,
Saints might be the worst team in the league right now.
to be fair to us too, like we both said, the Saints might be contenders in the NFC. We didn't say they'd win the NFC South, but we said they'd be contenders. Boy, were we wrong.
I mean, yes, even saying they were contenders in the NFC is that's way out the window right now. Yeah, like you said, Saints, you're in full-blown panic mode. Panthers, you've already realized and understand that you're not going to be good. So when you get a win, you're kind of like screwing up your tank. But at the end of the day, it is kind of funny to see the Panthers beat the Saints.
Yeah, it's oh how the mighty have fallen. The Bengals hosted the Raiders. The Bengals winning this one 41-24. And this is the Joe Burrow that we haven't seen all year, and that we need to see more of if Cincinnati wants to even try to have a chance to make the playoffs. Now they're sitting 4-5. Joe Burrow 27 for 39, 251, 5 touchdowns, 1 interception. Really, really solid game from him. And Chase Brown also on the ground, going for 120 yards on 27 carries. They just had a really, really good game over this Las Vegas team that is floundering like no other. I know Max Crosby was really, really pissed off after the game over the way that they played. It's like, hey, maybe if you weren't so loyal to the Raiders, you could be on a winning team right now. I'm just saying. I genuinely don't understand his loyalty to that team, but it is what it is. But yeah, the Raiders just ugly, 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 ugly. Yeah, honestly though, with the way that Vegas was even able to score 24 points against this Bengals defense, it's like, ooh, how'd you let that happen? But it is what it is there.
Yeah, I mean that was my main concern was the Bengals defense is still looking very shaky. They allowed 24 points to a Vegas team that is just not good at all. And I mean, you allowed Desmond Ritter to throw a touchdown pass on you and only have 5 incompletions. That's not that great of a performance for the Bengals defense. Now, granted, you won the game if you're Cincinnati, but that's because this is the Joe Burrow we've been waiting to see. He threw 5 touchdowns to 1 pick, and Chase Brown had 120 yards on the ground. So this was a very good game for the Bengals offense and a very shaky one for their defense.
Yeah, it was a little shaky for the defense, but again, it was also Vegas, so I don't really want to put too much into that as well. Maybe they just had a randomly good game. Who knows? Um, the Giants hosted the Commanders. The Commanders winning this one 27-22. And this is kind of why I said like this is a huge move for the Lattimore trade is a huge move for Washington because you made Daniel Jones look good. And teams that do that usually lose because the defense just can't stop letting Daniel Jones look like he's an actual NFL quarterback. He's not. But he went 20 for 26, 174 yards, and 2 touchdowns in this game. And it's just like, man, what are we doing here? Letting Daniel Jones go 20 for 26. Come on now. So hopefully this really, really helps Washington out. Jane Daniels had a solid game, 15 for 22. That's, I think, the lowest amount of passes he's thrown all season long. I might have to double check that, but he still went for 209 yards on 15 completions, which is insane, with 2 touchdowns as well. Um, but but yeah, I think for Washington, it kind of just showed like, yeah, this defense needs help, especially in the secondary, and they got that today.
Yeah, you said it. Anytime Daniel Jones is a competent quarterback or looks like a competent quarterback, he knows the problem. And the Commanders did address that today with adding Marshawn Lattimore. But at the end of the day, they're sitting pretty at 7-2 on top of the NFC East. So it's an okay win for them at the end of the day, but you cannot play the Giants this close.
No, I know it's a division opponent on the road, but this division opponent is ass. You can't be doing that. The Falcons hosted the Cowboys. The Falcons winning this one 27-21, and this is the first time in a very, very long time we've seen the Cowboys start the season 3-5. A very, very long time since we've seen this team with a 3-5 record. Dak Prescott had an okay game, I guess you could call it. I mean, I wouldn't call it great, but he went 18 for 24, 133 yards and a touchdown. Kirk Cousins 19 for 24, 222 yards and 3 touchdowns for him. Atlanta, Dallas. I mean, this was a very, very close game throughout the entire game. It was back and forth. Dallas scored, Atlanta scored. Atlanta scored, then Dallas scored. Then Atlanta scored, then Dallas scored. And then Atlanta scored, and then Dallas scored with a minute 28 left. And the rest was history from there because the NFL sucks and got rid of the most critical part of a game with onside kicks. It's coming now, and so like you can just scheme around that. You don't. It's stupid. But anyways, Atlanta gets the W here, and it was a close game. I mean, it was very, very balanced. I mean, the total yards very close. Time of possession very, very close. Only a minute between the two in terms of time of possession, and yeah, it's just this Dallas team is floundering. I mean, they're 3-5 now, but when Jerry Jones is your general manager and your owner, you can't fire yourself necessarily, but Jerry Jones, man, just stop being GM.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, this has been the first time in a while that we've seen the Cowboys this bad, this early in the season, and it's grounds for concern. I mean, it's the first competitive game against a competent team in a little bit, but it's not good at all. They're 0-3 at home. You're 3-2 away. It's a lot of stuff that needs to be cleaned up. And for the Falcons, they're sitting pretty right now on top of the NFC South because a lot of your fellow teams are losing now.
Yeah, a lot of your fellow teams are losing. Tennessee hosted New England. The Titans winning this one 20-17 in overtime. Obviously, they win it with a field goal here. Drake May had an okay game. He did throw 2 picks and only 1 touchdown in this one, but again, he's very, very young still, and he's learning. Well, he was learning from Jacoby Brissett, so not an ideal way to learn NFL football. But also his offensive line is so bad. So I mean, that does not help when you're having to throw pretty damn quick, get the ball out, and it's like, yeah, Mason Rudolph. Just he had a Mason Rudolph type game. Not really anything good, but not terrible either. But yeah, this was definitely toilet bowl of the week, and it really would have been even a bigger toilet bowl if it just ended in a tie.
Yeah, it was funny because I remember texting in the group chat. I was like, I really hope this game ends in a tie, and unfortunately, it didn't. But yeah, the Titans found a way to get a win, and they somehow are trying to keep themselves out of the worst team in the league conversation. But at the end of the day, like you said, it's the toilet bowl of the week, and it's not really much else to go from there.
The Cardinals hosted the Bears. The Cardinals absolutely butt fucking the Bears, 29-9. Arizona on top of the NFC West. Haven't said that in quite a few years. For them, they've kind of just been at the bottom of that pile for years. Between Seattle winning it somewhat recently, the Rams obviously winning it with Stafford when they won the Super Bowl, and the Niners dominating it the last few years. I mean, it's been a long time since we've seen Arizona at the very top of this division. And they beat a Bears team that just could not do anything offensively, man. They would get down the field as soon as they got to Arizona territory. Arizona's defense became, like stand up and just said, nope, you're only kicking field goals today, buddy. And yeah, you're not going to win in this league only kicking field goals. Also, to the cherry on top was them getting a safety halfway through the fourth quarter. It was like, oh man, you just, as a Lions fan, you just hate to see it. You just hate to see it. But yeah, no, it was a solid game from Kyler Murray. Didn't throw for any touchdowns, but he didn't turn the ball over, and that's what's most important for this Arizona team right now. But they really just got it all done on the ground today, or not today, but on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, you said it. James Conner led the way with 107 yards on the ground. But what really punctuated this loss for the Bears was letting that 53-yard touchdown run up to DeMarcado right before the half. Like, you only scored 9 points in this game, and you were already down 14 at that point. Just go into the half, get the tackle, go into the half. Try to, recoup your losses. That's just inexcusable. This defense has been so good this year, and they got torched. It was not a good game. And Caleb Williams didn't throw a touchdown. He had an okay performance, but, this running game for the Bears was just non-existent. I mean, this is exactly who I thought they would get in DeAndre Swift. He'd have a good game every so often, but this is who he is. He's going to put up 50 yards on like 20 carries, and that'll be it. Or, he'll be able to score 100 yards and a couple times, but Rome Odunze leading the way as a rookie with 104 yards. It's good to see the rookie-to-rookie connection, but you'd like a veteran like DJ Moore or Keenan Allen, someone who you spent big money on to step up and lead that team.
I mean, look, they drafted Odunze to give Caleb Williams that super over the top weapon. You insulated him with those veterans, but Odunze's supposed to take the top off, and he's probably the best rookie receiver this year, I believe. Maybe Malik Neighbors has something to say about that, but I think just because of the package that Chicago has, Odunze might obviously be a little bit better there. Philly hosted Jacksonville, and Philly wins this one 28-23, and late in the fourth quarter, Philly was on upset watch. Jacksonville was starting to drive down the field, but their defense ended up getting the stop that they needed, and Philly wins the game. This was obviously not a great win. It does not look good for Philly to let Jacksonville basically put you on upset watch at when you're at home too. So it just wasn't a good game. But I think ultimately what lost this game for Jacksonville wasn't necessarily that stop for Philly at the end of the game. It was Trevor Lawrence throwing two interceptions in this game, I think. He went 16 for 31, 169 yards, and two interceptions, no touchdowns. And I think if you, uh, if you just don't have those turnovers, you probably end up winning this game. Because even if you kick two field goals off of it, you end up winning the game by a point. So in Philly controlled time of possession. And again, I think a lot of that was just three total turnovers from Jacksonville to Philly's one. But ultimately, I think the turnover battle is what won this game for Philly.
Yeah, you said it. I mean, outside of the Jags being shut out in the first half, those turnovers are really key to what probably eventually lost them this game. I mean, that's a potential three touchdowns or three field goals that they could have gotten, and that's enough to win you that game.
Yeah, it's definitely enough to win you that game, and um, yeah, and look, I don't think, I mean, really, both teams did not play too well, um, and yeah, that I I'm gonna just say this right now. Saquon Barkley is gonna get a lot of high school kids yelled at for that fucking move that he pulled, the backwards jump. He's
Either yelled at or injured.
he's gonna get a lot of high school kids just yelled at by their coaches for even trying it. Um, it was a hell of a move, but you already know some stupid ass high school kids are gonna
Yeah,
try it
you
now,
need a
and
jackass warning label. Do
yeah,
not try this at home.
for real though. Seattle hosted the Rams. The Rams winning this one 26-20 in overtime. And when Geno Smith threw a 102-yard pick six in the fourth quarter, I thought this game was over. But no, Seattle ends up coming back from that with a touchdown with 51 seconds left in the fourth quarter. And yeah, Geno Smith, I mean, 3 for 3 or 3 and 3, three touchdowns, three interceptions in this game. Matt Stafford had a really, really good game though. 298 on 25 completions, two touchdowns, one pick. But Stafford, yeah, probably his best game all season, I think. Looked really good. It helps obviously having Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua back in that offense, and it shows with how they've played really the last 2 weeks now, 3 weeks even, and yeah. So Seattle, another loss, not really helping them out at all. Trying to stay in this fight. I mean, again, there's very, very, very few games. I believe still just one game between the top and the bottom of this division, and so Seattle's still in it at 4-5. But yeah, it is. This division is so good but so bad at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, everyone is about 500, but that's not really a good thing in this case. It's not like the NFC North where every team was above 500 at some point, and even still, every team but the Bears is above 500, and the Bears are still 500, but they're starting to fall back down to earth. But enough about the NFC North. The biggest takeaway for me about this game is Geno Smith going three touchdowns and three interceptions. If you take a look at his season totals, he might be giving Jameis Winston another partner in the 30-30 club. He's got 11 touchdowns to 10 interceptions right now on the year. So Geno is not it for Seattle, and that's why they lost this game. I mean, he threw three picks, and I mean, they had two fumbles that they lost as a team and recovered as a team, but you don't want to see that. You got to clean it up.
Yeah, you got to clean it up, but yeah, he's probably he's on 30 for 30 watch with that one. Green Bay hosted Detroit. Detroit getting this one 24-14. And first of all, the weather in this game was a lot worse than anyone was expecting. Um, it was raining super heavy, so you kind of expected there to be a lot of running, but there was a lot of throwing in this game. Um, Jared Goff, 18 for 22, 145, one touchdown. Going 18 for 22 in the weather that they were playing in is absolutely insane. Just speaks. Also, St. Brown, 7 targets, 7 receptions. He did not drop a pass in this game, and he also got an insanely good touchdown with one of the best victory celebrations that we've seen this year with the headstand. Jordan Love, 23 for 39, 273, one pick, and it was a pick six by Kirby Joseph, who's just, him and Brian Branch are just fucking ball hawks. Brian Branch, by the way, getting ejected off of a really terrible call. Obviously it was for damn sure a penalty, the hit, but then the league ejected him. It wasn't even the refs that ejected him. The NFL called down and said he's out of the game. Terrible call there, but it is what it is. But Jared Goff, I get Dan Campbell said today that Jared practiced all week because they knew the weather. He practiced all week. They were soaking balls in water before each play during practice, just for him to learn to throw with a wet ball, and clearly that helped, going 18 for 22 in this game. The Lions also tried out another trick play. Shocker, Ben Johnson does that. But the defense really played well, and realistically, they won this game by 17, or 18. It was just a garbage time touchdown with a 2-point conversion for Green Bay, and that was kind of it. But yeah, Lions looking really solid, and again, now that you have pass rush with Zadarius Smith, Jordan Love might have had an even worse game than he did.
Yeah, and like you said, this outside of that garbage time touchdown for Green Bay, this was a very, yet again, another dominant performance by the Lions. Now, I won't discredit the Packers. They did have a lot of miscues because of the weather, but I found it really funny that Elton Jenkins at the end of the game said the team that executed won, not the better team, when he himself was the center that, directly just could not snap the ball to Jordan Love. So I think it's just salt coming out on his case, but yeah, the Lions clearly the better team and clearly one of the best teams in the league right now.
Yeah, it's funny. Well, the better team also executes more. So like that's kind of how that works. If you're the better team, you will execute better than the other team, won't you? Kind of how that works logically. But anyways, yeah, it was a bad weather game. But Jared Goff can maybe shut the critics up about him playing in weather and outdoor stadiums now, because yes, at his time, with the Rams especially, he didn't look good out in outdoor games, and even a lot of the outdoor games with the Lions, he hasn't looked all too good. But he put it together this week, and the Lions stay rolling. Sunday night football, we had the Vikings hosting the Colts. The Vikings winning this one 21-13, and I think it's safe to say that that Sam Darnold has come back down to earth. 28 for 34, 290, 3 touchdowns, but 2 interceptions, and that's why I say he's come back down to earth, because he the first 5 weeks of the season, he looked incredible. And now the last few weeks, really since playing the Lions, he has not looked his best. Joe Flacco, though, I don't think he's really the answer for Indy, but it's definitely not Anthony Richardson either. And the Colts just looked pretty bad in this game, plain and simple. But yeah, ultimately Minnesota moves on to 6-2, um, and yeah, that's really all you can say about it. Sam Darnold's come back down to earth.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you're playing a close game against the Colts is not a good look. And for this Minnesota offense to be shut out in the first half just shows how bad of a first half this was in general. I mean, it was 7-0 Colts, and we didn't have an offensive score the entire first half. It was a scoop and score on the defense. This is the Vikings might not be all we thought they were, and I wasn't too high on them to begin with because they haven't beaten. I mean, the only team they really beat that I was like shocked that they beat was the Texans, and because that's how it's because they how convincingly they beat them. I mean, they beat the Texans by 27 points, and now we see that they lost to the Lions by 2. They lose to the Rams by 10. By I understand it was an iffy call that led to that, but at the end of the day, you just beat the Colts, who are not a good team at all, by 8 points, and you had to have 21 points scored in the second half to win this game. It's not a good look, and this offense is far too good for that.
Yeah, it is. It is far too good for that, and yeah, to beat the Colts by only 8. A Colts team that is really struggling too, mind you. It is not a good look at all. And then last night, um, first of all, Chiefs, they hosted the Bucks. Chiefs win this one 30-24 in overtime. Um, First of all, they had to get bailed out by the refs because there was a very obvious false start by Kansas City on that last drive, and they were able to score off of that. But then overtime, the overtime rules suck. I know, obviously, in the playoffs, it's both teams get a possession, but it needs to be that way in the regular season too. It is awful. Um, but that said, I think the people are saying the Bucks should have went for 2, and it's like yeah, I get that. The analytics though, they kind of agreed that going for 2 was more stupid than just kicking the extra point and taking this thing to overtime. But when you're going against the Chiefs in overtime, just try and go for 2. Either way you're going to take the L because for some reason the Chiefs always win the coin toss for overtime, and yeah, that's all I can say. This it was Mahomes' best game this year. 34 for 44, 291, 3 touchdowns. Finally, has a game where he doesn't throw an interception. Same with Baker Mayfield, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions from him. But yeah, Kansas City bailed out by the refs again.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in full agreement with you. I think the playoff OT rules should be the normal OT rules. And I mean, just by the reaction of Baker Mayfield after he saw or the coin toss did not go his way, frustration. He's like, we blew it. We lost. That's not how it should be at all. And the Chiefs, you had a good game from Patrick Mahomes for the first time in a while. Travis Kelce had over 100 yards receiving for what I think the second time this season. I mean, Kareem Hunt is still producing uh, enough to be serviceable, and they won the game in overtime. But I think the Bucks should have had a chance, and if they don't score then, and the Chiefs still win by 30-24, it's more respectable than them sitting there like, hey, yes, they had controversy that they ended up in overtime anyway, but now at least the Bucks had a chance to tie it and win it in overtime.
Right, and that's the thing. Like honestly, if I was the Bucks when I scored there, I would have gone for 2, and you fuck Kansas City there. And yeah, but yeah, so that's gonna wrap it up for the NFL. We're gonna head on over to college football now. And do you want to start with the playoff rankings, or do you want to go into review first, and we'll hit the rankings last?
I think we saved the rankings for last.
Gotcha, gotcha. So let's get into this then. We had number 15 on Friday night. Boise State hosts San Diego State, and uh, yeah, it wasn't even close. 56-24, your final score in favor of Boise State. It was obviously just one of those games where Ashton Genty, he didn't put up the yardage that you kind of expected him to. He only put up 149 on 31 carries, but he had 2 touchdowns, and that was enough. Boise State did something that they haven't really done all year, and that was throw the hell out of the ball. But San Diego State's pass defense is really, really, really bad, so it kind of makes a lot of sense if you think about it. With Madsen throwing 4 touchdowns in this game for Boise State, so really, really good game for Boise State, and they stay with only one loss now.
Yeah, I mean, you said it. It's a big, big win from Boise State, and right now, they are the playoff representative for the group of five schools, and we'll get into that later. But they're playing like it, Another big performance from this team, and you know, at the end of the day, if their only loss is to currently number one Oregon, that's a hell of a year for them.
Yeah, that's a really, really uh, good schedule and good loss to them. Uh, Game of the week, number 3 Penn State hosting number 4 Ohio State. Ohio State getting the win on the road in Happy Valley, 20-13. And look, first of all, James Franklin, he needs to go. Um, he is now 1-8 in top 5 matchups in his career at Penn State. He was brought in, to win the Big Ten, hasn't done it. Brought in to win a national championship, hasn't done it. Came in to beat Ohio State, only done it once in his entire time at Penn State. It's time for him to go. First of all, you know, it, Will Howard gifted you a 10-0 lead early in the fourth quarter, and then you couldn't score anything on offense, and you had opportunity after opportunity to make big plays, and you didn't. And ultimately, that cost you the game. And there's a ton of coaching malpractice on both sides in this game. Ryan Day did a lot of stupid things as well. But now he is, I believe, 3-7 in top 5 matchups, which is still not good. But yeah, either way, James Franklin, you need to fucking go, man.
Yeah, you said it. I mean, James Franklin, he had another game, another big game against Ohio State, and you just cannot come through. Your offense scores one touchdown the entire game in the first quarter. And granted, there were only 2 touchdowns scored by Ohio State, but you just lost to Ohio State, who lost to Oregon, and Oregon is the number one team in the country. And Penn State was arguably right there with them. And, this was, they had the chances, and they just could not execute.
Yeah, they just could not do anything against this Ohio State defense that isn't even that good. So yeah, number 5 Miami hosted Duke. Miami winning this one 53-31. It was pretty close, at halftime. I mean, Duke led 21-17 at the half. They opened up the third quarter, with a 5-minute drive for a touchdown. And then after that, they just couldn't do anything. The offense was gas. I mean, this Miami defense is not even good. But this Duke offense just couldn't do anything in the second half after that opening touchdown drive in the second half. And Miami just doing what they always do in the fourth quarter and just actually looking really, really good. Yeah, it was another great game for Cam Ward, for his Heisman chase. 25 for 41, 400 yards, 5 touchdowns in this game. The other big thing, though, I think that didn't help Duke at all, a lot of turnovers, especially in that second half. They had 4 total turnovers in this game. And you keep giving the ball to this Miami offense, it's going to fucking hurt you.
Yeah, I mean, you said it. This is a big win for Miami, and it's one of the few that they've had this year where they didn't need the refs to win this one for them, or they didn't need a close game to win it. And Cam Ward, 400 yards, 5 touchdowns, man. Put down the video game controller. Actually step into the game, bro. Like, holy shit. You cannot be a human.
Yeah, no, he's literally putting up video game numbers. Man, it's insane. Speaking of video game numbers, though, Jackson Dart is back. Um, Ole Miss, number 19, Ole Miss was on the road against Arkansas, and we previewed this game. We said this is going to be probably a pretty close game because Arkansas has played really really good games against really really good teams and even beaten some ranked teams this year. And no, it wasn't even close. 63-31 your final score for Ole Miss. Jackson Dart 25 for 31, 515 yards, 6 touchdowns. He also ran 10 carries for 47 yards. No touchdowns there, but he led the team in rushing. And yeah, Jordan Watkins, 5 of those receiving touchdowns or passing touchdowns that Jackson Dart threw. He had 5 touchdowns on 8 receptions and 254 yards with that. This was the best that the Ole Miss offense has looked since like week 3 or week 4. And yeah, Jackson Dart, he's I don't think he's in the Heisman talks anymore still, but if he has more games like that, he might crawl himself back up in there.
Yeah, I mean, we were just talking about video game numbers, but holy shit. 515 yards, 6 touchdowns, and 5 of those touchdowns going to one receiver. That's ridiculous. And then, like you said, Jordan Watkins, 5 touchdowns on 8 receptions for 254 yards. That's a Randy Moss stat line right there. It's amazing game from this Ole Miss offense. I mean, that the defense gave up 31 points, but you still outscored them by 32 points.
Yeah, it was literally like you're on fucking rookie mode in CFB 25, man. That was insane. Number 21 Army hosted Air Force. Army winning this one 20-3, and this is the lowest that Army has scored all season long. But they still get the job done. They hold Air Force, who's really really bad, to just 3 points, but only 20 points on this Air Force team. And obviously Army just running the ball. Air Force's defense is pretty damn good stopping the run. I watched some of the highlights in this game. I'm like, maybe just Air Force is just really really bad offensively. I mean, obviously they are. I mean, they're one of the worst offenses in the FBS this year. But yeah, Army, they get a win. That's all that matters against a fellow armed service. But yeah, they stay undefeated. They're 8-0 for the first time in forever.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, this is the smallest win for Army that we've seen this season, but it's another win to keep them undefeated, and they might have to win out to potentially steal that playoff spot from Boise.
Yeah, I mean, if they beat Notre Dame, which I don't think is going to happen, but if they do, yeah. Number 24, Illinois hosted Minnesota, and Minnesota gets the win here, 25-17. Yeah, we talked about in the preview. We said we think Illinois will win, but we can definitely see Minnesota winning. Well, Minnesota won, and they covered the spread, man. Obviously, yeah, 25-17. And it's not like Illinois had a bad game. It's just Minnesota had a better game. It was, a very good defensive battle throughout. But ultimately, Minnesota doing something that they've done really all year really, really well, and that's run the ball. I mean, Darius Taylor had 22 carries for 131 yards and 1 touchdown in this game. And yeah, it was a pretty even game. Illinois lost the turnover battle, and I think that's ultimately what won Minnesota this game.
Yeah, I mean, you said it. This wasn't a bad game from Illinois. Just Minnesota executed better, and they ended up winning and covering. So good on them.
Yeah, we were both surprised that Illinois wasn't favored in that game, but I think it makes sense now. now that we've seen that game play out. Number two, Georgia hosted Florida. Georgia winning this one 34-20 in a game that they kind of really struggled. The scoreboard doesn't really show, anything. I mean, even the box score. You look at it and it's like Georgia, dominated in terms of the box score, but Florida was up at halftime, 13-6, and they were the only team in that half to score a touchdown. But ultimately, Georgia's offense just eventually kept grinding it out. Carson Beck, though, awful game, throwing 3 interceptions, and I believe all of those were in the first half. But yeah, Georgia ultimately comes back. They win this one 34-20. A comeback win, and it's at home against a bad, not even a bad. Florida's been better than this year than I think many of us thought. Certainly better than I thought. But it is a rivalry game at the same time. But this is a game where you got to blow the doors off them if you want to be taken seriously. And when we get to the CFP rankings, I think we'll kind of understand why they are where they are.
Yeah, I mean, you said it. This is a game where they were down 13-6 coming out of halftime, and Carson Beck did not have his best game. I mean, 3 interceptions, and he still threw for 300 yards and a couple touchdowns. But it's kind of scary to see Georgia have to score 28 points in the second half to win this game. But yeah, this should have been a double-digit win, but not as close as it was.
No, it shouldn't have been as close as it was. I mean, even in the first half, I mean, Georgia should have been winning by the end of the first half. But yeah, Carson Beck just had an awful half of football, and that was kind of that. Michigan hosted number one Oregon. Oregon winning 38-17, and really all you can say about this game is yeah, Oregon is elite, and Michigan has a lot of work to do. Although the Michigan's recruiting class this year has been, whew. But Davis Warren, he did a good job. He protected the football. Didn't throw any interceptions, didn't turn the ball over. Michigan with no turnovers in this game. Colston Loveland's still, one of the best tight ends in college football, but ultimately it doesn't matter because Oregon is just that good. And Michigan, they put up a fight, but yeah, the second half was kind of rough for them.
Yeah, I mean, Oregon's the number one team in the country for a reason, right? And this just goes to show it. This is a Michigan team that's, a shadow of their, national championship shelves. And it's just not a good performance. I mean, you had probably their best offensive performance of the year, but probably their cleanest performance they've had with no turnovers. But at the end of the day, you still lost by 21 points. And that's exactly why Oregon is number one in the country.
Yeah, that is exactly why. Number 11, Iowa State hosted Texas Tech. Texas Tech winning this one 23-22. Um, and yeah, this was kind of a weird game for Iowa State. They were heavy favorites at home, and they just lose this game. They went into the half with a 13-10 lead, and then it started just falling apart for them. They couldn't get anything going on offense, and ultimately, their defense didn't do a terrible job in this game, but it really just falls on the offense because, like I said, they didn't score any points in that third quarter, and then they were able to score 10 points in the fourth quarter, but Texas Tech was able to drive down the field, with just over 2 minutes and score a touchdown. They tried to go for a 2-point conversion. They missed it, but it didn't really matter because Iowa State just didn't have the time to do any magic. And yeah, Texas Tech walks away with a win here, and Iowa State, man, Kansas State looks at that loss and they're rubbing their hands together, man.
Yeah, you say that, but when we recap Kansas State, They're not so much anymore.
Right.
But yeah, like we have been mentioning, for Kansas State, if they were to see Iowa State stumble, and this is it. Iowa State has finally stumbled. But it was a good game from Texas Tech. It wasn't a terrible game from Iowa State. It's just, you used up all your comeback magic against UCF.
Yeah, that's pretty much how it is. You keep playing games like that, you're ultimately going to start losing some. Michigan State hosted number 13 Indiana. Indiana winning this one 47-10. Michigan State, I mean, jumped out to a 10-0 lead early in the fourth, or not early in the fourth quarter, in the fourth quarter, or first quarter. My bad. And then it was just 47 unanswered from Indiana. And at first I thought, okay, Michigan State might pull off the upset here. No, no, no. Curtis Rourke was back, and I said if Curtis Rourke plays, Indiana's going to win this game. If he doesn't, Michigan State might keep this close. Yeah, Rourke played it. Yeah, it was over. And Aiden Childs throwing 2 interceptions. Obviously, recipe for disaster there. But yeah, Indiana then improved to 9-0 for the first time in school history.
Yeah, Indiana 9-0 for the first time in history is a very weird sentence to say. But I think I'd like to see if I can sue Michigan State for their fight song for false advertisement. Because in their fight song it says the Spartans play or no good ball. No, they don't. No, you
No,
don't.
no, they don't.
So you're like, as a Michigan State fan, like, yeah, can I sue them for false advertisement? Because yeah, this is not good ball.
No, it is not good ball at all. Speaking of not good ball, here's that Kansas State line. Houston hosted number 17 Kansas State. Houston getting the win here, 24-19. Um, yeah, Kansas State. Your offense blows. Your defense is okay. You allowed Houston to put up 24 on you though, so like, but your offense is fucking awful. So Kansas State saw the result of that Iowa State game. They were like, oh fuck yeah, and then they just fucking tripped right over themselves.
Yeah, Kansas State saw that Iowa State win was like, oh yeah, now let's do that too.
Yeah, no points in the fourth quarter. You allow Houston to score 2 touchdowns in that fourth quarter to end up winning that game. You fucking suck, bud. You just fucking suck. Speaking of you just fucking suck, um, South Carolina hosted number 10 Texas A&M, and South Carolina wins 44-20. Truly fucking embarrassing. Yeah, South Carolina. We even said South Carolina's been able to play close games with top 10 team or top 10 teams, but top 25 teams this year, and scare them. They haven't necessarily beat any. I do think they do have a top 25 win on their schedule this year, besides Texas A&M. But yeah, Texas A&M just got absolutely dog walked by South Carolina. And yeah, Texas A&M did not score a single point in that second half. It was 20-20 at halftime, and then yeah, South Carolina's defense just stood on their heads, and ultimately, Texas A&M, you just fucking suck, bud.
Yeah, I mean, they beat LSU. To follow it up with this, that's yeah, just terrible. I mean, like we said, South Carolina isn't a bad team. They have played very close games
You know,
with ranked
LSU
teams,
LSU barely beat South Carolina earlier this year too,
and
36-33.
they beat them on very high controversy as well.
Yeah,
So
yeah. South
South
Carolina ain't no
Carolina
joke
could
this
have.
year.
They're just like I was saying about Arkansas. They're a better team than we give them credit for, and they might not end up ranked this year. But I'm looking at this game here against Texas A&M to say, if I'm South Carolina, like, yeah, this is a sign of what this team is. They're good. They're capable of winning SEC games and against these, high rollers in the SEC, and they might not make the playoffs. And I mean, not might, they won't make the playoffs, barring absolute fucking chaos throughout the rest of the way. But they might be competitors for a late playoff spot next year if they play like this.
Yeah, they might be contenders for sure next year if they keep this program going in the direction that it is going. Number 11, Clemson hosted Louisville, and Louisville getting the win 33-21. Um, it is the first time in a long while Louisville's beaten Clemson, and they kind of it was kind of the same thing that South Carolina did. Uh, it was kind of close. I mean, Louisville was up 17-7 at the half, and then it was pretty much all Louisville in the second half, especially in the third quarter. No, I mean they only scored 9 points in the third quarter, but yeah, Clemson couldn't really do anything until late, mid to late fourth quarter, and it just was not enough to get the job done. And yeah, Clemson's really it's their worst game since the Georgia game this year.
Yeah, you said it. This is Clemson's worst game since the Georgia loss, and again, it's another loss for Clemson, and because they've been playing games and they've been dumpstering teams like Army has, and it hasn't been close, and it's now a 12-point loss to a division rival who is now throwing a wrench into things because SMU, I believe, is now in position to face Miami in the ACC championship game instead of Clemson. So we've got a lot of chaos to go through still, but good win for Louisville. Kind of shaky loss for Clemson.
Yeah, it's not a loss that you want Clemson to see, but yeah, Louisville, after struggling the last few weeks, they come back and they're kind of looking good now. But I don't think that's gonna really last for them. Anyways, but number 7, Tennessee hosted Kentucky. Tennessee winning this one 28-18. And Kentucky led at the half by 3, and then after that, Tennessee just kind of stood up defensively, and their defense isn't really that good. But Kentucky did what they've done all year and play pretty close to uh, you know ranked opponents. But this time they lose by 10. Yeah, Tennessee. The last few weeks for them has been a struggle, especially offensively. They just cannot get anything going offensively, and they started off the year scoring 60 plus points a game, and now they're barely able to hit 30 anymore. So yeah, not the greatest game from Tennessee, but it's a win over a bad opponent, but a bad opponent that has some pretty good losses, I would say.
Yeah, it's a double-digit win against number one, an in-conference opponent, and number two, it's an in-conference opponent who played Georgia within 1 point. So the fact that you didn't, you know, play this game, within 5 points, or just lose this game outright for Tennessee is it's a good game for them. And ultimately, I'd like to see them score 30 points or more again, but it's an SEC game, so I'm not surprised that they didn't.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised and not surprised at the same time. And then this last game here, and we talked about this on Thursday. Number 20 SMU hosted number 18 Pitt. SMU wins 48-25, and realistically, they won 48-11. Pitt had 2 garbage time touchdowns to get this one a little bit closer. But we talked about this on Thursday. This was going to be the first real true test from Pitt this weekend, and yeah, SMU just blew them out the water. Again, like I said, they realistically won this game 48-11. But yeah, for Pitt, just it was not a good game, and we kind of talked about this on Thursday that yeah, this is going to be a true test. This is the first real team that Pitt has played all year. It's on the road. Let's see if they're actually legit. Newsflash, they're not.
Yeah, it's a rough day for Pitt when you realize Kyle McCord's not on the opposing team to throw 3 interceptions or 3 pick sixes and 4 interceptions or whatever it was. every game. So reality check for Pitt. At the end of the day, it is their first loss. But now you have Clemson ahead of you still. You have SMU ahead of you, and you have Miami ahead of you. The path to the ACC championship for Pitt just got a lot more convoluted, and the path to the playoffs is also more convoluted.
Yeah, it's getting tough for Pitt now. But I think SMU obviously has a very good chance to make the ACC the ACC playoff picture is so weird right now, with all these losses that these different teams have. I mean, just looking at the ACC standings right now, it right now would be Miami and SMU in the ACC title game. Both are undefeated in conference play, so that's why SMU obviously has a loss on the record. Still, Miami stays perfect as of right now. But yeah, it's very very. Pitt still has a path forward to the ACC title game. Same with Clemson, but for Clemson, it's I think a tougher path forward than what Pitt has. But ultimately, for both those teams, it's very very tough uphill battle from here.
Yeah, I mean you said it. It's the toughest battle Pitt's had, and it's rough. You got, like you said, you got Clemson, SMU, and Miami all ahead of them. And Clemson, they just suffered a loss, but they're still a very good team, and SMU is better than Pitt, as we just saw head to head. So it's going to be an interesting ACC run.
Yeah, it'll definitely be interesting for sure. So let's get into the college football playoff rankings now. So right now, I mean, these top four spots are just rankings. I mean, the top four spots are going to go to the conference winners. But right now, you have Oregon, Ohio State, Georgia, and Miami in your top four right now. Um, Obviously, if Ohio State loses to Oregon in the Big Ten championship game, Ohio State's not going to be in this top ranking. Or if it's Oregon that loses to Ohio State, it won't be Oregon in the top four here. But I think it's interesting that Miami's up there, considering BYU has a much better strength of schedule than Miami. But Miami's up there at 9-0. I guess with BYU at 10-0, but BYU being where they are at 9 is kind of surprising. And like I said, BYU has a ranked win on the road. So why they're below Miami is beyond me. But you got Texas at 5, Penn State at 6, Tennessee at 7, Indiana at 8 is kind of interesting. And then, like I said, BYU at 9, Notre Dame is at 10. Thing with Notre Dame, they're not guaranteed a spot because again they don't play in a conference, obviously. So that's going to be, it's possible they could get booted out because of that. And then you have Alabama at 11. Look at the dick riding there. And then Boise State right now holds that group of 5 spot. And like we said too, with the Army game, even if Army beats Notre Dame, they're Army's probably not going to make that group of 5 spot, unless the CFP committee feels like, yeah, maybe we could give it to Army instead of Notre Dame for that, especially because that loss to NIU for Notre Dame still does not look good, and it keeps getting worse each fucking week that we pass by. But just your initial thoughts, I guess, on this top 12 currently.
Yeah, I got a few issues with it, and it starts right there up in the top four. Like I know I mentioned it to you, uh, pre-recording, but Ohio State at 2 kind of bothers me. Like I understand that, they just beat Penn State. I think out of the one-loss teams that are up in the top 5 right now, I would give the edge to either Georgia or Texas. But like at the end of the day, I do understand because Ohio State's loss is to Oregon, and Oregon is the number one team, and Texas lost to Georgia, and Georgia is right now the number three team. So there's an argument, but I don't know. I don't have confidence in this Ohio State team, and especially with how they played Nebraska and how they're playing. It's just I don't know if they're going to be capable of competing with these other teams. And now Miami is a different story. Well, you know, if Miami plays Ohio State, I feel like Ohio State could beat Miami, but the refs might play foul in that one. At the end of the day, I'm not going to discredit Ohio State. They're one of the top five teams in the country, without a doubt. It's just I'm not too high on them, and that's just a personal thing. But I am also a little iffy on Indiana and BYU being around the 10 area because they're both undefeated. So that might be worth a little more value than where Texas, Penn State, Tennessee are. But at the end of the day, Tennessee, Penn State, and Texas have better schedules than Indiana do.
Right. I mean, Indiana has in this top 12, they have the worst strength of schedule. So why they're ahead of BYU, I could not fucking tell you. Because again, BYU has a ranked win on the road. Indiana's best win is a team that's just barely above 500. Let me see real quick who their best win is now. I mean, at the time it was Maryland. Um, yeah, their best win is Nebraska, who's not even good, um, and that was at home. They don't have any real big wins. They don't have any big wins on the road, and they have the teams that they've played are combined have a losing record still. So it'll be interesting when Indiana plays the only real team that they have to play this year, which is Ohio State. When they get absolutely dump trucked by, I think, Ohio State, just because, again, Indiana's just been beaten up on really, really bad teams all year long. So I would put BYU ahead of even Tennessee at this point. Again, BYU has a really, really nice ranked win on the road over Kansas State. Yes, we know Kansas State is not that good, but they're still better, I think, than Tennessee and Indiana. And you can make an argument for Penn State too, but I think Penn State would beat BYU in a head-to-head game, so you kind of just go from there. So, right now, on the outside looking in, you got SMU at 13, Texas A&M at 14, which is just fucking laughable. LSU at 15, also laughable. And then Ole Miss and Iowa State are, those five that are outside looking in right now. And yeah, you kind of look at these rankings and you're like, well, the only team that's outside of that top 12 that deserves to be in it would be SMU, right? So, but there's not a single, besides Miami in the 4 spot, there's not another ACC team in the college football playoff right now.
Yeah, and I mean, we might not even see Miami in the college football playoff if they end up getting upset by SMU in the ACC championship, and then it only ends up being SMU.
I think a one-loss Miami will get in just because of the brand bias that there is. But yeah, I don't see Indiana sticking around unless they pull off the upset against Ohio State and are able to get at least 2 of the Big Ten championship game, where they'll get dump trucked by Oregon. But I just don't see Indiana beating Ohio State right now. I really, really don't, because at least Ohio State has proven now that, okay, they can go on the road and beat a ranked team. I think Ohio State hosts Indiana, so that's going to help that Ohio State team out, I think, a little bit. But yeah, Texas A&M being at 14 is, again, like I said, laughable though. But same with LSU at 15. But once you get outside of those teams, even, it's just like, I don't know where you rank any of these teams. None of those teams really deserve to be in right as of right now. You can maybe make the argument for Iowa State to be above Texas A&M and LSU, because Iowa State's at 17 right now. But even then, it's just like that loss of Texas Tech does not look good.
Yeah, I mean, I would argue Iowa State, but other than that, maybe Ole Miss because of how they just came back and had a dominant win. But other than that, it's pretty much set for me.
Yeah, yeah. So obviously these rankings are going to be changing every week from here on out. We don't care about the AP poll anymore, and honestly, the AP poll is pointless. But the college football playoff committee is also very very biased. So either way, you kind of don't get really good rankings. But yeah, so that is gonna do it for us today. Thursday, obviously, we're gonna preview the weekend for you as we always do, and we'll talk about anything else that comes up. So with that said, guys, rate, review, subscribe, help us out. Let us know what you guys want to see more of. Of course, follow us on Twitter or X at the Andrew N. Ian Show. Uh, Check out our YouTube page as well. Thank you guys again so much for listening, and we will see you guys on Thursday.